What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our weekly DFS live stream for the Charles Schwab Challenge. It's my favorite time of the week. It's your time, of course, when you can ask all the questions that you have, and we can prepare to make our lineups for the week. So I can see quite a few of you already down in chat. I always love to see that. We have Wilson Dowd down there. What is going on? Hopefully you're doing well. We got Neil down there. Same thing with Gianni. Hopefully you guys are having a splendid start to your Wednesday night. So we'll hop into it, of course, first with the weather here for this event, which it's Texas. We know it's going to be blustery out there. We know to expect a little bit of the unexpected, to be quite honest with you. And at least for Thursday's forecast, it has been all over the place. It's gone from being, extremely calm in the morning to extremely severe winds in the morning. You can see now there's 30-mile-an-hour winds projected for tomorrow morning. And in the afternoon, it's actually gone from being what looked like a really bad wave to play into perhaps the advantageous wave. So there's been just a lot of flip-flopping going on with this weather forecast. And as a result, I don't think you need to overplay it, right? This is Texas. The wind is volatile at best. It's almost impossible to guess. We saw that over there in Oklahoma. And for us to try and take a stand towards one wave or the other, I think at the best you'd be guessing. So just kind of want to start off with that. If you're playing the wind this week, I think maybe if you're 150 maxing, allocate 15 lineups where you go 6 of 6 for one wave, it's 6 of 6 for the other wave there, maybe another 10 to 15 where you go 5-1 for each wave, and leave it at that, right? Don't do anything super crazy for this week. In terms of the split, I'm not sure it's going to even exist, right? If it's going to be difficult for all day Thursday, which it kind of looks like it's going to be, and then over here for Friday, it looks like it's going to be relatively easy for the entire day. I'm not sure there's going to be that split at all. It could be extremely flat across the board. So maybe that's a little bit of music to your ears. We don't have to go out there and play a lot of strategy when it goes to the morning versus the afternoon wave draw. But that's going to be the case for this week. So just taking a look at data golf, just to go over some of the course basics here. This is a golf course that we've seen for quite some time. So all of the metrics that we have on Colonial are going to be relatively robust. They're going to have a large sample size, and they're going to be things that we can rely on. So first off, the driving accuracy percentage is at 62.5%. That is just slightly below the PGA Tour average. So it's not like it's extremely low at this golf course, but it is low considering how many times people are laying up off the tee. There's going to be quite a few players that are hitting 3-woods or 3 irons off the tee. So the fact that they're only hitting 62.5 shows you just how narrow some of them can be, particularly in some of the more difficult driving holes. So if you're betting on Prize Picks this week, for example, and you're trying to go after driving accuracy, just understand that your day is likely going to come down to 3 or 4 specific holes that are hard to hit the fairway, which you're hoping your guy can go out there and do, because on a lot of those layup holes, it's going to almost be a gimme fairway. So understand that they are pretty narrow landing areas. That is why we are still prioritizing precision over power. In terms of your greens in regulation, we do have a relatively low percentage, right? It's 4% lower than what we're used to seeing, which is due to the size of the greens. They're right around 5,000 square foot on average. So if you're on Prize Picks, just keep in mind that it's going to be a little bit harder to hit greens at this golf course than at others, but nothing drastic. It's not like it's 10% below the average. It's not like we're looking at something in the 50s in terms of a GIR rate. It's still there right around 64%. Something to note with the weather that I should have mentioned before is that it has been extremely wet over the last 2 days. And I believe it started thunderstorming Tuesday night. It's continued pretty much all day here Wednesday. They've gone over 1.5 inches of rain. So I would expect the course to be relatively receptive here on Thursday. So if you're playing on Prize Picks, or of course you're playing a DFS, just expect scoring to be there on Thursday, potentially even on Friday as well, as the course continues to dry out throughout the weekend. Now, that rain should be out of the forecast. You can see there's 0% chance of rain here on Thursday. Same thing with Friday. So it will firm out and get a little bit faster throughout the week. But for here on Thursday and Friday, you might see some solid conditions. You might see a cut that's actually under par for once. Most of the years, it's a +2 cut line. We've seen a +1 cut line from time to time. The one outlier over the last 5 years, at least, was a -2 cut line, I believe it was either 2019 or 2020, one of those 2 years. We could see something similar to that just because of some of the rain that they've gone over the last few days. So that's going to be the meteorologist Luke side of this event here. Let's go ahead and hop into the projections. We're also going to catch up on chat. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Let's see what we got. We got Robert down in the chat as well. Let's get this cash, my guy. You could not have said it better. Sydney James says he's in here. Glad to see you. What's going on, dude? Matthew says, I'm new here. Can't wait to hear what kind of magic you've got. Well, if you're new, even better, right? We got a lot for you here. Hopefully you feel welcomed here. If you have any questions at any point, any players you want a deep dive on, just go ahead and fire them down in chat. That's our policy here. There are no bad questions. Whatever you're wondering about, anything you want more data about, information at all, just go ahead and let me know. CJ says, what is going on? Thanks for your videos, valuable info. I appreciate that, CGiani. Derek says, im or answer, having a hard time deciding. So, we're getting into the good questions now. So let's start off with that, right? Let's do a head-to-head, right? Im versus answer. So for me, both are solid plays. Both will be in my player pool. Obviously, I have answer as a core play, and I have Sanjay down as a yes. So I would side towards Abraham Answer. A lot of that just comes down to the unknown of Sanjay M, right? Sanjay M dealt with COVID. We haven't seen him for the last 2 to 3 weeks. So that's why he's also relatively low owned, but it's only a 1% difference between the two players, right? So it's not like you're getting a huge discount from going from an Abraham Answer to a Sanjay M. So for me, it would be Abraham Answer, but I don't hate Sanjay M as a play. In fact, I'm going to have 25% Abraham Answer this week and 20% Sanjay M. So that gives you an idea of how I feel about them. Both very solid plays. I just like one slightly more than the other. CGiani says, I'm using CT Pan. He is consistent and never lets me down. Any news on CT Pan? I haven't seen anything. So yeah, that withdrawal was a little bit weird. He also had that 1 to 2 event stretch where he looked a little bit off, but I'm also going to be on CT Pan. This is an event where he's had success at in the past. It's positional. It's all about hitting greens and making putts, and that's his MO. So definitely agree with your CGiani. He is in the player pool. Adolfo says, any thoughts on Justin Rose? Another just fantastic question. So believe it or not, Adolfo, about 30 minutes before we got on here, I was watching highlights on YouTube of the 2020 event, and I didn't realize Justin Thomas was in contention there. He's won this event before when it was at 20 under par, and he's been in contention 3 other times at Colonial. So he's down here at, I believe, like $7,700. I have him down as a no. He's not in my lineups as of right now. I have a feeling that may change by tonight. Just every time this guy shows up to Colonial, he seems to contend here. And of course, there's always the horses for courses type of argument. And I think that might be the argument here for Justin Rose. So there's not that many guys in my player pool. I'm just playing based on course history. I mean, one of those would be a Tony Finau. It's one of those few examples in my pool. But Justin Rose may become one of them. So as of right now, he's not in my player pool, Adolfo. But based on something that I saw 30 minutes ago, so right before we got on stream, that may change because, I thought that win was a one-off, right? I hadn't done, truthfully, my due diligence on Justin Rose this week. But based on what I saw, when I actually looked it up, I think I may need to rethink that. So I think you're onto something there, Adolfo. Wilson says, do you like Kevin Na? I absolutely do. He's a core pick for me. So we're going to save the whole argument for Kevin Na for when we get down to the 8K range. But yeah, he's a core pick. I absolutely love him here. David Faber says, thanks for JT last week. Absolutely agree. I loved that pick. He, of course, cashed me an outright on Prize Picks. He was even more clutch. He ended up cashing in 8 of my 10 cards, so that was huge there. And I'm a huge JT fan, so I can't complain. That was the ideal outcome when it came to the PGA Championship. Derek says, thanks for the insight. I appreciate that. And Matthew says, PP has Fowler at 3 birdies or better. You thought he was a decent prop. What do you say? I like the fairways better. That's at 7.5. But birdies are better. I could see that too, right? He's been on a super hot stretch with the iron play. The issue would be the putter, right? The putter has been extremely cold. But the reason why I like him in DFS, we're going to talk about Ricky Fowler extensively as well, is that on bent grass specifically, he's had by far the most success of any surface on his career. So there's certainly a familiarity factor there. So if he's going to go out there and get that flat stick working, you would expect it to be at this type of golf course. So Matthew, I think you're onto something there. I personally like the fairways just a little bit more. Derek says, what reminded me of not sure what you're saying there. Payne says, thoughts on Lucas Glover. So we'll talk about him in the 7K range. In general, he's not my favorite play. I just, he makes sense from a plotter's perspective, but the form isn't really there for me. So we'll talk about him a little bit more extensively later on. And Catch Me If You Can says, how about Jason Smokecrack? I always follow up the year like a KH Lee. I'm not one to do that. Catch me if you can. Obviously, that worked out for you with KH Lee. But each to their own, right? For me, a lot of times those players are overrated. Their lines are a little bit inflated because they won the year before. So that's why I avoid them. But of course, the counter argument is there's been repeat champions, right? I mean, obviously, KH Lee is the perfect counter example. So I'm not going to be doing it. I'm going to have him in my player pool, so I'm not going to bet him outright, right? So he's going to be in my DFS pool, but not sure I can follow you on the outright train. I think I might be pushing it. It's a damn strong field. I think one of these elite tier guys that we talk about here in a second certainly takes this home. So let's hop into it. Let's talk about the player pool. And for me, I'm fading the two top guys. And it's not really a fade of Justin Thomas. In fact, I'd argue that you should probably be playing Justin Thomas this week, but I'm a more aggressive player than most. I can't play everyone up top. And the fact of the matter is, I love Colin Morikawa's upside this week. I love Jordan Spieth this week. I think he's by far the best play on the slate. And then you have guys like Victor Hovland and Sam Burns that have already talked up that I obviously want to invest in as well. So for me, Justin Thomas and Scotty Scheffler are not only expensive on the slate, I don't think they're the best course fit. They're both players that really utilize their power off the tee, their off the tee ability to gain an advantage over the field. When it comes to their iron play, I mean, specifically with Justin Thomas, sure, he's elite in that category, but he's not an elite putter, right? Whereas a lot of the guys down towards the bottom of the 10K range, and particularly the 9K range, have that elite skill set of being elite iron players and elite putters, right? So I don't care about off the tee as much this week. Like I said, there's going to be a ton of laying up off the tee. There's going to be a lot of forced layups where you kind of, no matter what you do, you can't really leverage that off the tee play. So guys like a Scotty Scheffler specifically that does primarily, I mean, let's look at the shots gained off the tee. It's just outrageous at this point, right? He's gaining 0.23 off there per round. The putter's not really elite there. He is gaining a bunch on approach, but it's a bunch around the green. Around the green this week, almost useless. It's one of the few golf courses where around the green, you can almost ignore it. You can almost completely take it out of your modeling. Justin Thomas, for example, right? He gains a bunch of strokes off the tee. Now, the putting has been super hot of late, right? That's why he's won a major championship, has these top fives. But we know Justin Thomas's identity isn't an elite putter, right? Whereas a lot of these guys in the 9K range, they're used to making putts in bunches. I mean, look at Sam Burns here, gaining over a stroke per round in the category, right? Abraham Anthony gaining close to a stroke per round in the category. That doesn't surprise us. And in fact, Sungjae Im gaining only a third of a stroke per round, that's surprisingly low. He gains a lot more than that when he's really on his best game. So it's just, he won last week. In the past, he has won after winning before, but he has a much larger sample size of going out there and finishing like 30th or 40th after a win. In fact, he has more missed cuts the week after a win on the PGA Tour than wins. He has one win on the PGA Tour the week after actually winning the week before, and he has like 4 missed cuts. And outside of that, it's like almost all 20th, 30th placed finishes. So it's, a mixed bag for JT. I expect him to kind of have that hangover early in the week. I will say I was considering playing him, right? Because, he seems like a very competitive cat. But the past performances, right? Like they say, we want to look at facts, not opinions, not what we feel like he's going to do. In the past, he has folded the week after a major championship or even just after a win in general. So will be somebody that I'm fading there. Scotty Scheffler, we talked about the off the tee play. I just don't think it plays into his game. Also, bent grass, I should mention, is by far his worst surface. So if there's anything we want to nitpick at even more than that, it would be that. Colin Morikawa, on the other hand, almost won this event. I think people forget that he was in a playoff against Daniel Berger in 2020. He putted the absolute lights out that week. It's a positional golf course that plays directly into his skill set off the tee. He's somebody who's an elite iron player. So with the small targets, it's going to have no trouble hitting those tiers that he needs to. And like I said, he's putted well on the greens before. He's shown an ability to gain 3-4 strokes to the field. If he does that this week, I mean, he wins the golf tournament, right? Last week, the ball striking was there at the PGA Championship. He was relatively accurate off the tee. He's doing his thing there. He's doing his thing into greens. Just needs to put together all 3 categories at the same time. And he does deal with struggles around the green. He's not the best player at getting up and down, but like I said, you can almost completely throw that out this week. So love Colin Morikawa at that price tag. Let's talk about Jordan Spieth. He's unavoidable. Usually I try to fade the highest owned play on the slate. That was Max Homa for me yesterday. Now that actually is Jordan Spieth. There has been a flip-flop in the rankings there. I can't fade the guy. He's first off my favorite player in the world. So going to have a hard time fading him, particularly when he's in form. But there's literally not one reason to fade him this week. First off, the approach. I mean, just look at the stats. Let's talk through it. Like, there's not one hole he can poke in his game. First off the tee, he's driving the ball unbelievably, right? If there's one thing that Jordan Spieth struggles with, it's off the tee. And of late, he's made that a strength. Approach play, you'd expect, right? Gaining close to 3/4 of a stroke per round, right? Okay, we get that. You'd expect that from Jordan Spieth. Around the green, gaining, okay, you'd get that. Shots gained putting, horrible, right? And you'd be like, oh, wow, so he's putting bad, right? That's not a good sign. It can't get worse than minus 0.84 shots gained per round. That is the bare bones minimum that he's going to do. He's not going to get worse than that. Jordan Spieth is one of the best putters maybe of all time, right? He's in the top 5 to 10. I can guarantee you that, particularly from that 15 to 30 foot range. So the fact that he's putted so poorly of late and still had the recent form that he's had is just, it doesn't even make sense. Like, the guy's playing on another level. 34th place, and that was with a horrible putting performance. Second place here. I don't know why I can't scroll here. There you go. Second place. First place, right? Ended up winning at the RBC Heritage. Miscut, 35th. Before that, it was a few other made cuts, a few other top 10 finishes. Pebble Beach, right? Second place finish for a Jordan Spieth there in the fall. He's been in this type of form, yet he hasn't had his best skill set. And for his career, by far his best surface has been bent grass, where he gains 0.873. Yes, almost a stroke more per round on this surface than he does any other surface. And at Colonial in the past, he has gained a ton of strokes on these greens. So if you're telling me that in the 3 tee to green categories, he's going to be in the top 5 in all of them, and he should bring this putter around that's historically always been here at this golf course, I mean, he's winning the damn thing. You know, I joked about it there on Sunday that I was going to slam a bet on him, and I have. I bet $400 on him to win this week. I couldn't resist. I placed a whole 4-unit bet on it, and I think he runs away with it. He's one of the few people that I've actually bet this week. It's a very top-heavy card for me, and I'm not locking him in DFS. I'm not going to be that foolish about it, but I'm going to have 40%. I'm going to have well over the field. I have him projected for 20% as of right now. And to be quite honest with you, I mean, his track record here speaks for itself. I mean, I don't want to say it's like a lock, right? But 2nd, 10th, 8th, 32nd was his worst finish. And right, if he finishes in 32nd, so be it, right? He made the cut. He scored points for us. If I play him in 40% of lineups, I'm not going to be all that bummed about it. But 2nd place finish, right? He's just been an absolute print fest at this golf course. And this recent form is just, I mean, this is one of the best stretches of golf that he's been in, right? If the putter was even a neutral at this point, you're talking about Jordan Spieth probably 2-3 wins in his last 2 to 3 months. Like, literally, that's how good he's playing at this point. So it's a very tempting player to fade just because of the ownership. But like I said, there's literally not a reason that I can find to fade him, right? If there's anything, we expect regression in the positive direction for this player, not in the negative direction. So a lot of the other players that model well, right, that are like number 3 in modeling, number 5, number 2, or something like that, are because the recent form has been unbelievable or something like that, right? Because they're playing above their baseline. You'd expect a little bit of negative regression from players like that. Whereas with the Jordan Spieth, he's playing below his baseline, right? He's still putting up those finishes. That's what I think makes him unavoidable. Like, even though he's the highest owned play on the slate, that type of skill set just doesn't come around all that often. So we'll catch up on chat after that hot take. I know a lot of people might have something to say about Jordan Spieth. We have Wilson talking about Minwoo Lee. He's not my favorite play, but he's a high pedigree player. At positional golf courses, at least on the European tour, he has had some success, at least from when I was watching him about 5 to 6 months ago when he was playing over there primarily. So I'm okay with it, Wilson. He's not my favorite play, though. You know, I wouldn't have him in 10 to 15% or something. It'd be, you know, that like 3 to 5%er, right? Somebody that you're just taking just in case. Chris Sauer says, would you consider 3 guys over 10K with 3 guys under 63K? No, I wouldn't. I think that's overdoing it a little bit. I think 2 guys under that might make sense, but not 3. C. Gianni says, Sunji Im had COVID and then traveling over the world. I tossed him. Yeah, he had COVID. He's only been out like 2 to 3 weeks, though. I think people are overdoing that. I really like him this week. I'm going to have him in quite a few lineups. Nick Mars says, when you get down to the old folks who won here, let me know what you think of Zach Johnson. Yeah, we'll talk about Zach Johnson. I actually looked at him, right? He's won this event twice. So obviously he has some familiarity here. The issue is the recent form. He hasn't done anything of late. Like, it's 2 or 3 missed cuts in a row. It's a withdrawal. And then I believe like a 13th place at the Valero, which is great, right? That's a hard golf course for Zach Johnson. So it's we'll talk about it, Nick. I'm I'm not going to be there, but I could understand being there is going to be my take. Chandler says, let's go. We made it alive. He said, let's go, Bryson. World's biggest Bryson DeChambeau fan down in the comments. Love to see it there, Chandler. And Neil says, a Spieth Na build, kind of dangerous, probably most popular build. Let me see. What do I have Na in ownership? I have not 13%. So I'm not sure that specific build is going to be very popular, but yeah, I agree, right? He's my highest owned play on the slate. I'd imagine there's going to be a lot of Jordan Spieth, Max Homa builds where you're taking somebody in the 10K, somebody in the 9K, and probably a lot of Jordan Spieth, Daniel Berger, and Gooch builds, like where you're starting with those two players. So I kind of agree with you. I just don't expect that to be who you took there. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of Jordan Spieth builds. And Payne says, thoughts on Varner, really liking him on long par threes, which there are 4 of them. So I'm not as much into the like proximity bucket things, specifically for like par threes too. Like if you're looking at par threes that are like from 200 to 25 yards, I'd much more look at the approach ranges, right? So if somebody's good on approach shots from 200 to 225 yards, that's something that I consider a little bit more than, let's say, the specific hole ranges. Because, there's like the par 4 scoring that are like between 400 and 450 yards. A lot of people do that stuff. Those aren't stats that I'll look at. I'll look at the approach ranges. And it kind of checks out with Harold Varner. He's pretty solid from 175 to 200, if memory serves right. So I think you could be onto something there. But for me, you don't even have to go that deep, right? Sometimes with analysis, it's great to go deep on it, right? But just look at the recent form. He's gaining in every category but the putter, where he's just a slight loser, and he loves bent grass. I shouldn't say he loves bent grass. That's a mistake right there, but he's not horrible on bent grass, right? So the recent form has been there. Yeah, I don't even think you have to look at the long iron stuff, to be quite honest with you, but I think he's a great play there for sure. Let's see a few other questions. Robert says Spieth answer will be a high 2. Completely agree. And Chandler says, do you think people will go Spieth and JT if people are going to get JT for no reason not to play? I don't think that it's going to be as popular because it's a little bit expensive. But because there are quite a few strong options below $6,500, not going to be impossible to build that way. So if you want to be unique, maybe go that direction, right? Take somebody like a Morikawa and a Spieth together, or even like a Scotty Scheffler and a Jordan Spieth, right? Now, I'm not playing Scheffler, right? But if you wanted to go to one of these two guys and take a Jordan Spieth, that's actually probably a good way to differentiate yourself. So just maybe differentiate in one more spot, right? If you're going to take Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth together, don't take Adam Schenk. We're going to talk about Adam Schenk down here. I like Adam Schenk this week, but he's going to be like 10% owned, right? So don't take him specifically, right? Maybe take somebody else like a Robert Streb. Robert Streb's going to be like 2% owned. And of late, Robert Streb has been better than Adam Schenk. I don't know why everyone's just running to play Adam Schenk when you have Robert Streb who's playing better golf over this 2021-22 season at the same price, right? So if you're going to do that type of build, just pivot down low, right? Because the guys down low are shit shows to begin with. So I don't think you really need to play the chalky guy down there, if that makes sense. Chalky guys, just off the top of my head, you're going to have quite a bit of ownership behind Smotherman, who I don't care. I'm playing 30% this week. We'll get that out of the way right now. I absolutely love him this week. Brandon Wu will be relatively chalky. Kurt Kitayama is going to get some ownership down there. We'll get to them when we get there. There's going to be some guys that get ownership, but just take somebody that's not on that list, right? And then he'll be good to go. All right, let's continue here though. Before we hop back into the questions. All right, so let's talk about the bottom of the 10K range. So we talked about Jordan Spieth. Will Zalatoris, the last time he lost in a playoff, the last time that was in the Farmers, and the last time he finished in second at the Masters, he really stumbled afterwards. He missed the cut both times, kind of wasn't able to post top 10 finishes for at least a month afterwards. So that does concern me. Now, it's a small sample size, right? It's just 2 events at this point. The second place finish at the Masters and also the second place finish at the Farmers this year. But it's there. The sample size is in existence. Love Victor Hovland. I'm assuming a lot of you already saw the core picks video, so I won't go into too much detail there, but it's a golf course that de-emphasizes around the green play. He likes bent grass. You can see he's better on bent than he is for his career, and he's coming in with form, right? He's gaining on approach, gaining off the tee like you'd expect, and the putter, while it hasn't been ideal for Victor Hovland, so you can see here, what is he? He's a slight loser to the field. He's losing 0.2 of a stroke per round. Like I said, he has that bent grass putting in his back pocket, right? So hopefully he can improve there, go out there and gain to the field, because if he does, he'll be in contention. Talked about Sam Burns today. Maybe all of you didn't see that video, so I'll talk about it. It's the classic play where it doesn't make sense from like a logic standpoint, right? Because we're looking for plotters, right? We're looking for accuracy off the tee, and we're looking for accuracy into greens. Now, he has the accuracy into greens. He's also an elite putter, right? So he checks, quote unquote, 2 of the 3 boxes we're looking for, except when you consider that Sam Burns doesn't have to hit driver around this place. If he wants to hit 3-iron off the tee, he's going to be almost just as long as most of the field. He's going to be more accurate than them. So in reality, it depends on his strategy, right? If he goes out there and he plays the quote unquote smart game this week, Sam Burns is one of the best plays on the slate. And that's why my modeling, it kind of disregards shots gained off the tee, right? It looks at everything else. That's why he's number 3 in the modeling. It's just a byproduct of actually looking at what matters and not letting something like, oh, he's inaccurate off the tee, keep you off of him. Because if he plays the right strategy this week, that doesn't matter. And that's the beauty of actually looking at numbers, right? Putting it, and quantifying it, taking all of your opinion out of it is you need to trust that type of thing. So somebody that I came around on because of my modeling this week, and we'll have to see if it bears out. He's not the best on bent grass. It is something that's working against him. And like I said, he's not an accuracy guy off the tee. But we'll have to see what happens there. I have a weird feeling that he has a solid week. One of the few other people other than a Jordan Spieth that I bet outright. That was just a single unit bet, though. Not a nuke like I dropped on the Jordan Spieth bet right there. Max Homa is a fade. He was the highest owned play on the slate when I made him a fade, but I'm standing by that. He's not the best putter on bent grass. I mean, off the tee is kind of similar to a Max Homa, where it's a majority gained with his distance, not necessarily his accuracy off the tee, which is a concern for me, especially for somebody in this 9K range. He's relatively expensive. And, I always play Max Homa. I'm one of the guys that plays him pretty much week in and week out. I love the ball striking numbers. That's the main reason why I play him so much. But the issue is he's normally cheaper. He's normally a lot lower owned, right? He's normally single digit owned. He's normally like $8,400. You're talking about a price increase and an ownership increase. And like I said, the golf course, the fit isn't ideal, right? Like I said, I mean, it's at least from the driving perspective, it isn't ideal because on approach, he's been unbelievable of late, gaining over a stroke per round. And even with the putter, he's been pretty damn solid. But like I said, could expect some regression there with the numbers on bent grass. And he's certainly been playing well above his head on approach. I mean, we're not expecting him to maintain this 1.1 shot baseline. We're expecting that to, at some point, regress down to earth. And if it's one of those regression weeks this week, watch out. That's probably when Max Homa goes out there and misses the cut. So we'll have to see there. I won't have him in DFS. He's somebody I'm taking a stand against. Abraham Answer at $9,400. He was a core pick, so I won't spend too much time here, but accurate off the tee checks that box. Approach play has been there over the last 24 measured rounds. He's gone into the plus before it wasn't in the plus. But the putter has been the huge bright spot, right? Gaining close to a stroke per round. Specifically at the PGA Championship, was much sharper on approach than what we've seen for the last 2 to 3 events. So if that's a sign of anything to come, if he continues his game in the other categories, he's on track to go out there and contend this week. Sungjae, we talked about him quite a bit already. I guess I'll just finalize it with the fact that, he plays so much golf that, even in quarantine, I almost guarantee you that he was practicing. I mean, it's not like before, right? When you had COVID, like you couldn't leave your house, right? Like you're not going to go to the grocery store, right? But if you wanted to get in your own car and go to your own practice facility where no one's going to be there, like a Sungjae Im's going to have, then why not, right? Why not go to your facility and just hit balls on the simulator? I'm sure that he's staying in somewhat of shape. He's an athlete, right? I'm assuming that COVID didn't make him very sick. I would assume so with Sungjae Im, based on his athletic ability and how fit he is and everything like that. He's going to be just fine. And I think that if he's going to be 13% owned, where at this price tag, if he was coming in with the form that he has, had played the week before, I mean, he might be 25% owned. He might be the highest owned play on the slate. Because, look at the shots gained metrics. They're still there. He's gaining across the board. There's literally not a hole that you can poke in his game. In terms of the metrics on bent grass, he's slightly better on it than he is on other surfaces. Now it's just hardly a gainer there. So nothing we really want to hammer home on there for Sungjae, but in general, just a lot looking up for him. So if he's going to be low owned because of the sentiment there, I'm going to be all over him. That's for sure. So Tony Finau, we talked about today. I love Tony Finau this week. He has great course history. So if we take a look at that, first and foremost, what is it? Like a 20th, 23rd, 2nd, 29th place finish. Guy's finishing in the top 30 every time he shows up here. And he's gaining across the board with his shots gained. So, of course, a bunch off the tee, a bunch on approach, around the green, and with the putter. And one thing's for sure, his bent grass is his favorite surface. He gains close to 0.2 of a stroke more per round on bent grass than any other surface. So, I mean, if he's coming in with this kind of form, I mean, I know the results haven't been there. I mean, it's kind of strange with the Finau, right? 30th, 41st. I mean, the second was really the one finish he's had all year. That was respectable. But lots of just mid-30s, mid-20s in terms of his finishes. The shots gained have been there, though. So, you know, it's whether you believe in the stats or you believe in the finishes. And you guys know I'm a huge stat guy. So I'm always willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Daniel Berger at $9,000. I still think he's dealing with an injury. I mean, the shots gain metrics are atrocious. You know, losing a bunch on approach. He's hardly a gainer with the short game, which, if you know Daniel Berger, that is much lower than his standards. And even the off the tee play, not quite as sharp as what we're used to seeing. So at that type of price, he's not my favorite player. He's also coming in relatively high owned. Now, when I made him a fade, he was like 16.5% owned. Now he's gone down a little bit there to 14.3. But in either circumstance, somebody that I will be avoiding, mostly just because of the unknowns with the injury there. We'll catch up on chat now, see what's going on there with chat. Let's see. We got Sophie who says, could you do a breakdown on Ryan Palmer? I see that he's played this course a lot. And not only has he played this course a lot, he's a member at this golf course. So yes, I'll talk about him. I love him this week, to be quite frank with you. Payne says, I like Brian Harman this week. 8 straight made cuts here at Colonial. I agree. And he's made a bunch of cuts on the PGA Tour in a row. He's accurate off the tee. Love him. He's a core pick. So certainly agree with you. We'll talk about him here in a second. Nick says, I've started a bunch of lineups with 9K guys. I have 2. Most notably, Sam Burns. I have quite a few lineups that start with him. And I have quite a few lineups that start with Sanjay and Abraham Answer together. So taking like 2 of those 9K guys. So yeah, I'm there as well. I think it could be one of those weeks. CJ says, be sure about that. I mean, like I said, I had him at 16% owned, which at that time was like the 5th highest owned player on the slate. I mean, even at 14.3, he's top 10 on the slate in terms of ownership. So, I mean, I'd argue that he's not being overlooked, right? I mean, that's a pretty healthy amount of ownership. And like I said, it seems like people are willing to forgive him for his play, yet he's been atrocious. I mean, last week at the PGA Championship, he's about as bad as it gets. He shot an 80 there on the second day. So I can't be there, to be quite honest with you. Matthew says, I guess my message was a little bit long above. What would be your favorite player to go top 5 this weekend in your favorite value play? So favorite to go top 5 would be Jordan Spieth. So I'm very bullish on his chances this week. And my favorite value play. So, I mean, that's a hard question to ask, right? Just to narrow it down, because it depends on price. And it depends on what you consider to be a value play. But I mean, just to give you one, I guess I'd go with Brian Harman. He's $7,800. But that's a hard question with the value pick there, because I don't know what you consider to be a value pick. But we'll go with Brian Harman there. Hopefully that fits in your criteria of a value pick. Nick Marr says, happens every week. Who's your chalky guy to miss the cut? And yeah, I agree. For me, I think Daniel Berger is a prime suspect based on his recent play. And Max Homa, like I said, he's a very volatile player. When he's on, he's going to make the cut and be in contention. But when he's off his game, he ejects. He missed cuts because his around the green play is horrible. So when he's missing greens, it gets compounded, right? When he's not sharp, he's only, let's say he's missing 8, 9 greens in a round, he's going to have a hard time getting up and down more than 4 or 5 times. That's why it's compounded as much as it is for a Max Homa. So he would be the super chalky play that might end up missing the cut. Let's see who else we got up here. Scotty Scheffler might miss the cut as chalk. I could see Colin Morikawa because of how, rusty he looked last week, but I also like his upside, so I'll still be playing him. Will Zalatoris, he's missed the cut both times after finishing in second before, so he'd be another guy. I'm giving you a bunch here, it's kind of like a ticking time bomb, right? But I really think all these guys might miss the cut. Tommy Fleetwood, because he's Ander cursed. You guys know what that is. He's probably going to miss the cut. That's just how that works. And Davis Riley, we'll talk about him here in a little bit. Not very bullish on his chances this week. So maybe Davis Riley makes this cut, but there's plenty of options there if you want to parlay them in a missed cut parlay. get 1,000,000 to 1 odds, go ahead and do so. Chris Palmer says cash head-to-head lineups: Spieth, Fleetwood, Nah, Kirk, McNeely, and Merritt. Or do you like somebody else better than Kirk at 79? So the only one, and again, like I said, it's kind of a joke, is I don't love Tommy Fleetwood this week, and it's not just because somebody else played him. It deals with the fact that kind of golf course this is, right? He's good at those grinded out type of golf courses like we had at the PGA Championship. Not necessarily sure he's going to be so good at a place where it's won at 15 to 20 under par. So that would be my only guy I would poke a hole at there. But, obviously I don't think you have to change that. At $7,900, I would keep Chris Kirk, though. I like him a ton. You can see he's in the player pool. He's top 10 in my rankings there. I mean, Harold Varner III is 9th. So technically, I do like Harold Varner III just slightly more than a Chris Kirk, but I don't think you have to make that pivot, right? If you made any pivot, it would be from a Chris Kirk down to somebody like a Harold Varner III, but I don't think you need to do so. I think that you're pretty solid with that lineup as it is. Catch Me If You Can says, ever considered a quickly DP tour show for degenerates like you? I have considered it. I've done it a few times in the past for the larger events. I have to see if I can work in a time slot for it, which I'm sure I can. I'm not the most busy guy out there. I'm sure I can take an hour or two to do so. I'll do it, but it'll have to be like a condensed show where I like talk about the course for like 5-10 minutes, talk about my favorite DFS plays for 5 to 10, maybe my favorite bets. So like a half an hour show, something like that. But yeah, I could definitely cook that up. I'll put that on the docket for next week. Chris Palmer says, also, do you like Fleetwood and cash better than Finau? I like Finau more than Fleetwood, actually. So I would go the other way, believe it or not. Chris Robert says, when there's 41 people watching and only 9 likes, what gives? Go out there and smash the like button. I can't do it for y'all, right? So like Robert said, if you haven't already done that, I mean, why haven't you, first off? And yeah, we got to get that ratio up, right? It's got to be a better likes to watchers ratio. So hopefully you guys can pull through for that there. And Antonio says, yo, what's up, Luke? I'm liking Reed again. Please talk me out of it. I'm not going to be the one to talk you off, Reed. Unfortunately, he's a value pick for me. Somebody I have 20% of this week. So I think you're talking to the wrong guy, Antonio. If anything, I'm going to talk you onto him here in a second. So I'm not going to talk you off. I mean, the argument against Patrick Reed is that it's Patrick Reed. We don't like rooting for him to begin with. So if he's in your lineups, you have that little bit of conflict of interest. And second off, look at the form for the last 3 months, right? If you look at it hard enough, you look at enough of those results, you'll probably puke enough times to not want to play them. But he'll be in my lineups, Antonio, that's for sure. And Alex says, do you like Tringale at all this week? I do. I do like Tringale. I like his accuracy off the tee. I like the fact that he's had success at Colonial in the past, and the putting is starting to come around. So, yeah, we'll talk about him here in the 7K range. I do like a little bit of the triangle man. So let's go ahead and talk about this 8K range, though. So Taylor Gooch is a core pick. Not going to talk about him extensively. I assume a lot of you already saw that, but he's got the skill set for the golf course. He looked really solid at the PGA Championship, was up there in the top 10 for a little bit there on Saturday and Sunday. The putting on bent grass is ideal. I mean, the shots gained metrics. I mean, outside of the PGA Championship, his recent form wasn't all that great, but he's still gaining across the board. Played well at the Players Championship this year. He's good at positional golf courses. He's proven that. When he won at the RSM Classic, obviously he was able to prove that. And last week at the PGA Championship, the similar type of setup, was able to find that success. So I like him there at $8,900. Love Webb Simpson this week. Webb Simpson, probably the player that I've gone, I'd say, the most excited about as the week has gone on. He's relatively low owned. I have him at 11.6% as of right now. The PGA Championship looked beautiful with the ball striking, was hitting iron shots in there to 5 to 10 feet all weekend. And the putter finally turned around. And the putter is really the one thing that's held him back of late, which is kind of surprising. He's losing over a third of a stroke per round. But if there's one surface where he gets the work done, it's on bent grass. So I would expect to see a little bit of regression from Webb Simpson there. And I don't understand the whole slander against his game. Like he was injured. He's obviously going to struggle when you're dealing with an injury. So you got to kind of put some of that sample size aside and understand that, when he's healthy, he's going to be a different player. And last week he looked like a different player. Mito Pereira, I cannot roster after his meltdown. That was, as a Mito Pereira fan, and I always said it was like the ideal outcome that JT won, which to most extents it was, particularly in a monetary way. It was the ideal outcome for me. But I mean, I'm a huge Mito Pereira fan, right? I've been beating this guy's drum since before he got on the PGA Tour. I was talking about the guy. That's how good he was on the Korn Ferry Tour, getting that battleground promotion. It's just, I still haven't even gone over that. I can't even imagine how he's going to play this week and be focused. He really blew that. It was probably the worst choke in any sport that I've seen. Not even exaggerating. Of any sport that I can think of, I can't think of a bigger blunder, to be quite frank with you. Billy Horschel there, $8,500. He's going to be underrated at these positional courses. I mean, of late, he's kind of faltered. I mean, his recent form's atrocious. Started to miss a few cuts, which isn't always ideal. The recent form over the last 24 reflects that. You can see on approach and off the tee. But if you look at the last 50 measured rounds, right, it gets a lot better. He's gaining a ton with the putter. He's gaining a ton around the green. Starts to gain off the tee again. You see he's gaining 0.2 strokes. The approach play is still a slight negative, but there's anything that he can turn it around fast, right? He's a volatile player. It's with the approach play. That's where he tends to be a little bit of a wild card, is with his shots gained approach numbers. He's not a safe play, but at this event, he certainly has top 5 or even top 3 upside, or even winning upside, to be quite frank with you. So I like him there at that price tag. Davis Riley, on the other hand, right? So Billy Horschel's used to being an 8K golfer, if not like a 9K golfer for us, right? Davis Riley, on the other hand, is like a 7K golfer at best. Maybe high 6s when he's not in form, that sort of thing, right? Billy Horschel, when he's not in form, is maybe $8,500 at the lowest, right? We're talking about two players that are opposite ends of the spectrum. And Davis Riley's also losing strokes on approach, right? So if you're telling me if I'd rather buy in the guy that's at his highest price right now and the same situation as the guy who's at his lowest price he could be at right now, right? Like, I'd much rather take Billy Horschel every day of the week. It's not even a contest, to be quite honest with you. There's a huge gap between at least the expected value I'd put between playing both of these players. And it's $100 difference in price, right? So tell me why he's only 0.5% more owned than Davis Riley. So it's little one-to-ones like that you can use to kind of, set your player pool for the week. So that's what I'm going to be going with. And of course, it's like, oh, the recent form isn't all that great, right? But Davis Riley's recent form, it's been decent. It hasn't been otherworldly, right? It's a few top 10s, a few top 13s in a row. It's like, that's why everyone wants to play him this week. And you can see the Mexico Open looked decent, but team event. And then it's missed cut, 63rd, missed cut, 20th place finish, right? So if you're looking at the last 3 events that he's played, you're like, oh, wow, this guy's an otherworldly player, right? Zoom out. Let's go to the last 50 measured rounds for him, right? Still losing on approach. Just a slight gainer around the green and a much smaller gainer with the putter, right? He's still gaining off the tee. He's always going to be a solid off the tee player, but he's not always going to be gaining in bunches like he is here, where he's getting half a stroke per round, right? He's not always going to be getting half a stroke per round off the tee. So certainly playing above his baseline. And usually people that are doing that have the train fall off the rails at some point and are prime candidates for fades, to be quite honest with you. Same thing with Max Homa, right? Max Homa, he's on a great stretch of golf, but like all great things, they have to end at some point. And if that ends up happening at 20% ownership, that's a very advantageous play to make there in DFS. All right, let's continue here. Jason Kokrak won last year. Can't argue against playing him again. Great skill set fit. Obviously likes the greens here. The recent form has also been there too, which it hadn't been for the last 3 to 4 months, but over the last few weeks started to gain off the tee. The approach numbers are starting to get closer to the positive. And of course, the short game always going to be a little bit mediocre. In fact, kind of surprising that he's gating around the green all of a sudden. Historically, that had been his worst category, was shots gained around the green. But all the more reason to like him here. If he's figured out the chipping game, the bunker game was really what was holding him back. His numbers out of bunkers are just atrocious. One of the worst players on tour for sand saves. Kevin Na is a core pick. Not going to talk about it all that much, but I love him this week. Accurate off the tee. The approach play has been there over the last 24 rounds. You can see he's gaining over 3/4 of a stroke per round on approach. Of course, he's a putter. He's particularly a good putter on bent grass, where he gains close to 1/3 of a stroke more per round. Same thing with Chris Kirk. And Chris Kirk is playing some solid golf, right? He was a play for us last week, ended up paying off big time at the PGA Championship, and only improved on his numbers, getting even more off the tee, even more on approach, even more around the green. And like I said, we thought there should be some room for improvement with the putter, which we certainly saw last week because of his numbers on bent grass, which, much like a Kevin Na, right, gains close to 1/3 of a stroke more per round. So like what we're seeing there from a Chris Kirk for sure. Gary Woodland is starting to look like the Gary Woodland of old, which is a pretty scary prospect for the rest of the field. Brian Harmon at $7,800. He's a core pick. I think we've talked about him like 5 times already. Same thing with Harold Varner III. So I'm not going to talk about them either more, but I love both plays. Both will be, I believe I have 25% Harmon, 25%, or maybe, 20% Harold Varner III. But either way are key pieces of my player pool. Justin Rose, we talked about, probably ends up in my player pool. Like I said, his finishes here are outrageous. I mean, look at the course history. Just it's hard to get better than what you see here. I mean, 20th, 3rd. That's the finish I was talking about there in 2020. He made the cut in 2019, and then a win. And he's played here multiple times before that. So it's a great track record for Justin Rose. I think that you could buy in on that. Sebastian Munoz, on the other hand, he's a little bit too inaccurate off the tee for my liking. So even though he's been in form, he's just a little bit too popular for my liking as well. Christian Bezuidenhout loves himself a short golf course, loves himself a positional golf course. I actually don't know if he's played here before. Might as well go check that out. Now, he has. He missed the cut in 2020, so nothing really to take home from that. But in terms of a skill set, he's got what we're looking for, right? He's gaining around the green, gaining with the putter. Maybe not the best off the tee player, right? But he's at least accurate when he has to be. He certainly lacks distance. One of the shorter hitters that we have here on tour. But over the last 50 measured rounds, you will see it slightly improves, where he's a gainer off the tee, a gainer on approach, still gaining with the short game like he's always going to. That is his strong suit. And at this precision type of golf course, that is what I'm trying to prioritize. So I will have him in a few lineups there. Tom Hoagie, I love at $7,600. You can say I like the 7K range in general, right? Like from Bezuidenhout the whole way down to Aaron Rai, there's only one no in this entire range, and that's Eric Van Rooyen. He's been playing some pretty atrocious golf. Guys like Tom Hoagie, I like. Absolutely love CT Pan. I like Cameron Tringale, McNeely, Kisner. I can't choose between any of them, so all of them are going to be in the player pool. And if you're playing 150 lineups, you can make that happen. I have leverage on all of these plays. A lot of that is because the bottom of the 7K range, there's a lot more no's. There's a lot more blanks down here as well. Just guys I'm not nearly as sold on. The talent drop-off from this like $76, $75, even $7,300 range down to the $71, $72 range, down to $68 is huge. There's a huge drop-off in talent. So that's why a lot of my player pool is focused on this range here. So I like Cameron Tringale. He's coming in with some form. Maverick McNeely not coming in with solid form, but from a pedigree perspective, we could expect him to turn it around at some point. And I always want to buy in early on those players. So I will have some Maverick McNeely. Kevin Kisner has won here before, enough said, so certainly likes the golf course. Patrick Reed we'll talk about, because I'm taking a pretty big stand on the Reed man this week. He gained over 5 strokes on approach last week, which is his best performance, I believe, in almost a year, since last year when he was really back in form. And that's usually something that we can continue from week to week, right? Approach stats are the most sticky stats that we have here on the PGA Tour. If he continues to do that and continues to be the short game wizard that we know he is at a positional golf course where shots gained off the tee, frankly, even shots gained around the green pretty much don't matter. He has the 2 things that we're looking for at elite levels, right? Five shots gained on approach is elite level stuff. He's capable of gaining 5 to 6 on the greens. I mean, that's how you win this golf tournament. So at $7,400, I think he's a lot more dangerous than people give him credit for. And it's almost entirely because of what we saw last week, right? I played him last week as a pure flyer, thought he had a chance to go out there and impress us, and did even more than I expected him to. So certainly somebody I think is on the uptick. Speaking of guys on the uptick, that would also be a Ricky Fowler. He loves the bent grass surface. And if you take a look at his stats over his last 3 events specifically, he's had everything but the flat stick working. Now, in one event, it was the off the tee play that wasn't cooperating as well. And another, it was the approach play that wasn't really cooperating quite as much. But in either circumstance, he's gaining in every category consistently, but with the putter. And like I said, on bent grass, it's where he's done all of his work for his career. So I really like his chances to bounce back there. If he finds the putter this week, he could be looking at a top 10, top 5 for Ricky Fowler, which would be a damn fun week for us as golf fans, for the whole sport in general. I think everybody really wants to see Ricky Fowler go out there and succeed. Let's go ahead and catch up on chat, though. I'm sure there's quite a few questions down here. Yes, there are. Alrighty, I'll try to do these as fast as possible. I'm going to answer the questions that I think are most relevant to the chat because there's quite a few down there. So Neil says Fleetwood breaks hearts this week. I'm not sure which way of breaking hearts that it is, but I won't have any exposure there. Nick Mar says all in Reed. Seems like somebody else is on the train as well. I know you were on that early. I think you bet him there on Monday. So, well, yeah, hopefully he comes through for us, Nick. That'd be pretty sweet. Tony says, do you think Herbert keeps up his really good play? I like him more at harder golf courses. So, I mean, this isn't an easy golf course. You know, it's going to play slightly over par for Thursday and Friday. I just don't prefer him at this type of track. Nick Moore says, I agree with the week. Has a Fleetwood missed cut written all over it. I definitely agree with you. Teddy says, Webb is bringing new clubs. He got rid of the old blades before the PGA. Look at his numbers before the PGA and after the PGA. I heard the same thing from somebody else. I think it was Catch Me If You Can, actually. He commented on one of my videos. I mean, if that's the case, even better, right? I mean, if it was an equipment change that takes him from the ball striking numbers from before until what we have now, even better, right? I mean, for me, it looks like he's just healthy now. I mean, I thought that was the main contributor to that success, but even more of a reason to play him this week. So all in on Webb Simpson to begin with, but even more so now. Wilson says, what about Sepp Straka? Did you see how he played over the weekend? That would be my only hesitation there. He looked really rough there on PGA on Saturday and Sunday. CGianni says, CGianni says, Gsluke, can you recommend a lineup optimizer? Don't have one that you like or don't like the one that you have. It depends on what you're looking for, right? So personally, I've designed my own because I didn't like any of the options out there, but I can just tell you as somebody that's used a lot of them, particularly when I didn't have my own optimizer. I used Fantasy Cruncher for quite some time. They were one of the better websites at actually setting groups. You could also upload projections to them, which I liked back in the day. I've used Roto Grinders, but that was like 6 years ago. That was a hell of a long time ago. They just had projections like on their site that I liked, like a lot of stats that you could just like look at on there. They still have optimizers. I would not recommend them. Fantasy Labs is out there. There's somebody that they're used by quite a few players. Fantasy National, I believe, has an optimizer on it. I've never used Fantasy National, but if they have one on there, you could probably look at that. I don't know. There's a lot of them out there. If you do some research, there's quite a few good optimizers out there that I'd recommend. But I use a home-built one, right? I'm a electrical engineer, also a computer engineering student, so I understand how to do that type of thing. And why not have something that you can customize, right? For me, I could set groups based on pretty much anything that I want. There's obviously a lot of overhead that goes into that, a lot of maintenance that I have to do every single week just to make my lineups. But that's going to be available at some point, by the way, guys. I know I get asked about that all the time, my optimizer. I will be putting that out on a website form at some point. There's just a lot that has to happen for it to actually go into that type of form. It's something that I run on my own device. It's not like I have a database set up where I'm pulling these stats from live like I need to actually do something like this on a website. So there's a lot that needs to happen for the optimizer to go up on a website, but it will at some point, I guarantee you. Because the optimizer I have is by far the best on the market. I can guarantee you that. I mean, I've been working on it for 4 years. It's something that I've put at least like 6,000 hours of time into, at least. At the very low margin, that many hours. So we'll have to see when that drops here, and probably in the next year. When I get the database up, I get the infrastructure, some of the coding set up for that, it'll be up. Matthew says, how do you think Gooch does this weekend? I love Gooch. I think he finishes in the top 10. Jen says, who is your sleeper pick? So I have a few sleeper picks. Sam Burns would be one. I think he's going to be a little bit overlooked this week. Tony Finau, and we also have Webb Simpson. I think all of those plays are going to be a little bit overlooked by the masses this week. We also have Dylan, who says Ricky Fowler at 74. I certainly think so. I like him this week. We have David, who says Patrick Rogers. I'm not as big a fan of Patrick Rogers, but he's not somebody I wrote down as a no. I have him down as a blank because he's good when he gets hot. And that's kind of asking a lot because he doesn't do it all that often, but he has the positive end of the volatility you're looking for, David. So not somebody that I'm going to have, but I could see playing him in a large field GPP. Dylan says rookie has done well here before. Yeah, I agree. So he has that working for him. Let's just take a look at that, right? Let's see what his finishes were. A few missed cuts, 14th. I believe you're talking about earlier on in his career that he had those finishes, but 14th place finish isn't all that bad. It's decent. Payne says Glover gained 7 strokes on approach last week. That's pretty intriguing to me. I just worry about the putting with Glover. He can't make a putt for his damn life. So where's he at in pricing? Let's see, we got Lucas Glover at $6,700. Let's see what he's gaining in terms of strokes. He's losing almost half a stroke per round, right? So that's the issue is Colonial. It's not all about just hitting greens. It's because it's a positional golf course where the winning score is between, let's say, 12 and 20 under par. You still have to make putts. And I'm not really sure you can do that. So if you're looking for like a top 25, somebody to make the cut, I think he's probably the guy that you want to go to. But if you're looking for somebody to win this event or finish in the top 10 like you need for DFS, I'm not sure he's your guy for that type of format. So that would be my take there on Lucas Glover. I love the ball striking stats, but I think the upside isn't really there. I mean, the guy won this year for the first time in like 13 years or something like that. That should kind of tell you about his upside, right? It's kind of capped just because of his skill set. Jin says, what is your strategy to play a 150 team? That would require about 2 or 3 hours, to be quite honest with you, Jin. The strategy is I play everyone I have down in my GPP pool, right? Now, the exposure rates, I'm not going to go over right now because I don't want people copying me, right? There's a little bit of artistic flair that has to go into making your own lineups, but the guys I have down as a yes are in my GBP pool. That'd be the best way to explain my strategy. Catch Me If You Can says, Screw McNeely. He's my Norlander. Okay, I understand that, right? I hate Norlander. I won't play him, so I certainly understand that. There's a few other guys for me I have that on too. I mean, Brian Stewart, I will never play that guy. I don't care what kind of form he's in. I refuse to play him. So I certainly feel you there. David says Rye or Rogers. I would play Rye 100%. Rye is extremely consistent. If you're looking for a cut maker, like a cash play, Aaron Rye is your guy. Like he's like one of the more consistent guys that you'll ever find on tour. Chandler says the PGA game is great. We're definitely going to have to play a head-to-head for sure. Maybe we can play one tonight. I don't know if you have, you have it on PS4, right? So yeah, we can play there on PS4. CGiana says, thank you. What is going on? Robert Babb says, oh man, sign me up for the optimizer when you get it out there. Yeah, for sure. It'll be a moneymaker for me, right? It's going to be a website. It's going to be a tool that I'm able to, leverage in terms of actually making money with a website, projections, all that sort of stuff. So I'm looking forward to it. It's been something I've been thinking about for quite some time, but actually ironing it out and getting it like started is going to take a lot of time and money. So I've been, kind of thinking about it, having it on the back burner. It'll happen at some point. Nick Mar says, I'd pay good money for that optimizer as two. You'd retire your legal pad. Hey, that's even more incentive for me to do it now. We can get you to retire from using the legal pad there. And I see Robert thinks that's pretty funny. And Payne says, thoughts on Doug Gim. So Doug Gim, I love him. I have him down as a value pick. So I'll save my whole argument for him when we get down here to $6,700. But he's kind of like a Lucas Glover, right? Where he sucks with the putting. But the reason why I'm getting to Doug Gim is on bent grass, he's flashed before, right? He gains over a quarter of a stroke more per round. So if any one of these players was actually going to have a good putting week this week, I'd be putting my money on Doug Gim over a Lucas Glover, right? So that's why I'm making that pivot there. So again, we'll talk about that in more detail here in a second, though. So EVR not playing because he's been atrocious of late. And this isn't really his type of golf course. Now, he can get really hot, so don't at me when he's first-round leader tomorrow. In fact, I've placed our first-round leader bet on Eric Van Rooyen, but even if he's first-round leader, he's ejecting over the weekend. The guy cannot play at these positional type of golf courses. That's just not his game. He's not very precise. To try and be as nice about it as I humanly can, he's just not a very precise player with any part of his game, to be quite honest with you, but he's an extremely explosive player. He's an extremely aggressive player that gets very hot from time to time. And a first-round leader, that is exactly what we're looking for. So I did bet him in that market. That's the only exposure I'm going to have to him this week, though. That's the only market I think you probably should play him in, if anything. Matthew Neesmith, he not Monday qualified. He qualified for the U.S. Open, so not quite a Monday qualification. But that's always good to see. Obviously, have to be informed to do that. The recent form metrics have been there for Neesmith as well. So if we jump up to this, he's gaining off the tee, gaining a bunch of strokes on approach. And while the putting hasn't been ideal, he is pretty decent on bent grass, right? He's slightly better on it than what he is for every other category. So I like him there at his price tag. Ryan Palmer is a member at this golf course. So at $7,300, I think he makes quite a bit of sense. I mean, also looked good last week, right? If we take a look at the recent form, it's been a lot better for Ryan Palmer than what we've seen for quite some time. I mean, 5th place finish, right? That's pretty solid. Missed cut last week isn't all that great, but it's a major championship. Going past that, 18th, the team event's pretty decent. He made the cut at Valero, another Texas event, but he was in contention at Valero before he ended up kind of faltering over the weekend. So he started to look like the Ryan Palmer of old. And that's a Ryan Palmer who's had a ton of success in the state of Texas. So I'll be taking him there. I think Troy Merritt's going to be a little bit higher owned than he should be. Like the modeling loves him, right? But he's the most boring player in human history. And even with his quote unquote great stretch of form, it's just been a lot of like mediocre finishes, right? Like 41st, 35th, missed cut. 12th is like his 12th and 4th are like his crown jewel achievements for his career over the last like 2 years. Outside of that, it's just a bunch of like 20th and 30th place finishes. So if you're looking for a consistent play, if you're playing cash, I think Troy Merritt, same thing with Aaron Rye would be some of my favorite plays. But if you're looking for upside, particularly with Troy Merritt, I'm not really sure that he has it. So don't be too fooled by those recent performances, right? Like those are huge outliers for Troy Merritt, right? He's not a popper that's going to be finishing 4th at the Texas Open all that often, right? That might be his best finish for the entire year, or even for a 2 to 3 year stretch, to be quite frank with you. We talked about Aaron Rye. He's a very consistent play. I'm going to have him in some GPP lineups as well. Cameron Davis, I worry about the off-the-tee accuracy. Ian Poulter, I worry about his game in general. I think he looks pretty dreadful out there. Joel Damon, it's the type of golf course that he should find success at, right? More of a precision over a power type of course. He's been very vocal about his lack of distance in the past, so could be somebody there at 72. Cage Lee at 72, I'm not sure I'm on that, right? He ended up winning at the Byron Nelson, which was ridiculous. After like missing 7 of 9 cuts or whatever the metric was on him. I don't expect that to continue, right? I don't expect him to just get hot all of a sudden and go on a run. He's probably going to revert back to that form that we saw. Dylan Vertelli is almost an auto play in Texas, but even more than that, the shots gained metrics are starting to look favorable for him again, most notably on approach. He's right around a neutral with every other category. So goes out there, gains with 2, maybe even 3 of the categories rather than just the 1 this week. Could put himself in contention. So I'm going to have a few lineups with him. JJ Spawn, maybe worth a few looks. He's very positional. Also has a win on his record in the last few months. Lucas Herbert, I don't hate, but like I said, I like him more at harder golf courses. Nate Lashley has horrible results at this golf course, so I am fading him there. Stuart Sink is going to be higher owned than he should be. He's coming in on decent form, right? But you got to remember, this is Stuart Sink we're talking about. This is somebody who, outside of the like last few performances, right, other than the 23rd and the 9th, he's been pretty atrocious, right? 68th, missed cut. Before that, it's a few other missed cuts as well. He's inconsistent at best. And we take a look at his stats, that really is reflected, right? He's losing a ton around the green. He's even with the putter. He is gaining on approach, but he's even losing off the tee, right? So the only category he's gaining with over his last 50 rounds are on approach, right? Which you'd expect for Stuart Sink. He's a very solid approach player, but that's concerning. The rest of his game is very concerning. I'm there at that price tag. David Lipsky at $7,000. I could see myself playing him in a few lineups. He's, a precise plotter. He's also a relatively high birdie or better percentage type of player, which does play into this week's skill set. Grill's probably not making enough putts. Same thing with James Hahn, probably not making enough putts here. Matt Jones, always an X factor that I have my eye on. He's, a high upside play, but also a very volatile play. Somebody that's going to miss plenty of cuts there. So if you're looking for safety, stay clear of a Matt Jones. But if you're looking for upside, he could be your guy. Adam Long is a value pick this week. I like him at his price tag. An elite accuracy guy off the tee. Somebody who's going to hit a ton of fairways. So at that price tag, he brings us that upside. Minwoo's not in my lineups. It's just, the form hasn't been there. If we take a look at the last 50 rounds for him, Minwoo hasn't really done anything, particularly on approach. He's losing over a stroke per round. It's hard to want to play a guy when he's looked how he has, even if we know how good he is on the DP World Tour, right? Even if we know from his multiple wins over there that he's a world beater, I want to see it on the PGA Tour first before I buy in. And he's still expensive, right? He's not $6,000. Realistically, with those stats, he should be like $6,100, something in that range. Not where he is on the board, that's for sure. Pat Perez is kind of always overlooked. Maybe it's because he's so average, but you can see it in terms of off the tee play, never going to be his, excuse me, guys, never going to be his strong suit. but he's great at everything else, right? He's going to gain in all the other 3 categories. Take a look at the last 50 measured rounds. It actually gets even better. I just got to scroll up here. Still losing off the tee, but a little bit less severe, and still gaining across the board, right? Even more significantly around the green, the approach play is still there. You know what you're getting with a Pat Perez, which is somebody who can compete at these short golf courses, but not always at the longer courses that we tend to see a lot on the PGA Tour. So I reserve my ownership for Pat Perez for events like this where we have that positional type of golf course. So it is we're firing up the engines for sure this week with a Pat Perez. We'll catch up on chat before we finish out the 6K range. So 1 second here, guys. Do have a lot of questions down there. We got Cindy who's asking about pre-ordering the optimizer. Yeah, no pre-orders on the optimizer, but I'll certainly keep that in mind. Jin Yang says, do you think Colin will win this week? I think he has a chance at winning this week, but I certainly think that Jordan Spieth has a much better chance of winning this week. I think you may have missed the section where I talked about those players, but I think Jordan Spieth wins this thing for sure. I mean, I have a $400 bet on him to win. So I certainly have my money where my mouth is with Jordan Spieth. David Farr says, I'm in on the optimizer. That's good to know. Mr. Bison says, any feelers on first round leader? So for me, it's Eric Van Rooyen. I have a bet on him to be first round leader. I have a bet on Austin Smotherman to be first round leader. And I have a bet on Colin Morikawa to be first round leader. So I've put 3 of them out there. Majority of them are playing in the morning, but EVR is just a pure field play. He's an absolute madman. He either goes out there, shoots like 6 to 7 under par, or shoots like 4 to 5 over par. So that would be my take there, Bison. Hopefully that helps you. Chandler says, thoughts on Nate Lashley? Not my favorite play. The course history isn't ideal there, Chandler. Michael says, despite the results, Sned's at 6.2. He's finished in the top 50 at least in all 7 trips to Colonial, including a second place finish. So I would worry about the upside, right? So even if he's making all of those cuts, it depends on what kind of contest you're in. If you're in a large field GPP, I'm not sure he's as much of a play as he would be, let's say, in a single entry or even a 2 to 3 max or something like that. So depending on the contest, I could see it, Michael. I just kind of worry about his upside. I mean, I don't see him finishing top 10 at this event. He's also a different player at this point, right? He's kind of past his prime. He's certainly on the decline at this point. So I don't hate the play. I just don't love it for the large field type of stuff. Catch Me If You Can says, call me Cash from now on. Let's not be formal here. Got to run. Go Neesmith. Have a great night, dude. We're going to call you Cash now for sure. Chandler says, well, that answered my question. There you go. And Wilson says, Steep Straka. Yeah, I call him Shank Straka. Or Sep Shanka, actually, is another word that I use for him, especially after last weekend. It was horrible over the weekend there. And Abrasive says, Jaeger, Korn Ferry Tour winner, but hasn't really transferred to the PGA. So one thing I'll say about Jaeger is I do have him in my pool. It's because of the recent form metrics. He's been a lot better than he has recently. The approach play is almost in the positive. If you take a look at the last 50 rounds, you'll see what I'm talking about. I mean, I think dreadful is probably the best word for it. He's losing a ton off the tee. The approach play ran around a, neutral rate, just not really doing anything, right? If you take a look at his rounds now, right, the off the tee play is not as bad. He's still right around a neutral. He's gaining around the green, and he still has the putter working. The issue is the off the tee play, right? And at a golf course where off the tee isn't very important, it's a short golf course. It's all about just hitting fairways. That's where you can see a Jaeger succeed. So I don't love him. You can see I don't have a ton of leverage to him. I have, I believe, 3 lineups with Steven Jaeger out of my 150. But I think you could do a crazier thing than playing him. Let's take a look at the recent form. I don't know what his finishes have looked like. I know that the irons have started to look a lot better. He 38th, 6th at the Wells Fargo, right? So that's obviously his highlight finish there. 15th. I mean, obviously, a lot of the shots gained metrics, I mean, the reason why he doesn't look as good is because outside of, the 6th, the 15th, the 38th, it's like missed cut. Well, you can see the 2 missed cuts there, but it's like 2 or 3 even more missed cuts beyond that. He's a volatile play. So just know what you're getting yourself into there, Abrasive. He's a high upside play, but he's also certainly a very low floor play. Somebody that could actually finish dead last out there. But I think you could do crazier things. So I'm not going to have him, but I could see doing it. Chris Palmer says Merritt or Rye and Cash. Rye all day. Absolutely love Rye and Cash. He's literally meant for cash games. His skill set is just hit every single fairway. He doesn't swing full out off the tee. I believe in interviews, he said he imagines swinging like 70% in terms of his power. And then he aims for the center of every green. He does not even look at the flag stick. For cash, that's beautiful. That's exactly what we want. Robert says, hot or cold on Thigala? I'm not that hot on him. I have him down as a blank, so I'm assuming that's probably why you mentioned that. Whereas he's $7,500 because he's like 6% owned. I have him at 5.5% owned. That's higher than Kurt Kitayama. That's higher than guys like a Mark Hubbard or Scott Stallings that have been playing some pretty solid golf. It's almost just as much ownership as an Austin Smotherman. So for me, I'd rather go to those players than a Sahith Theegala because, I mean, he's looked really bad of late. In terms of my modeling, he's number 81 in the field. And you're talking about, a 6K range golfer that has some name recognition behind him. And, that's why he's like 5-6% owned, is because of that name recognition. I just like him better at different types of golf courses, right? Where it's not as much about precision off the tee. He's a little bit wild when it comes to his driving accuracy, but I think he could do worse than a Sahith Theegala, but he's just not my favorite play. The recent form hasn't been there. I mean, to be quite frank, it's been pretty atrocious for the guy. You got Matthew says, again, my first live session with Luke. Great stuff here. So informational, great insight. Appreciate your time invested here. Hoping you can help me out on the bankroll this weekend. Hopefully we can all win this weekend. That'd be pretty nice. Glad to have you here, Matthew. Hopefully you enjoyed. Chandler says, Spieth, Homa, Gooch, Nah, Fratelli, and Shank. Decent lineup. So, okay, great example here, Chandler. So I'm not picking on you here, right? At the beginning, I know you joined in a little bit late. I mentioned how if you're going to take like a Spieth and then Homa together that are super duper chalky, just make sure you're taking somebody down low that's a little bit unique. So Shank is going to be, let's say, like 5 to 7% owned because pretty much anybody and everybody this week has talked up Adam Shank as their favorite play down low. It is a misprice, but there's other guys at $6,000 that I really like. So if we scroll down to the bottom and show you what I'm talking about, I really do like guys like a Robert Streb. I like going to guys, like I said, Adam Shank's in the player pool, right? But Doc Redman at $6,100. Adam Svensson, you could take at $6,100. Even at $6,200, guys like a Michael Thompson, Kramer, Hickok, I'd much rather have them if they're going to be 10, 15 times less owned than somebody like an Adam Shank, because I know I have Adam Shank at 0.4%. That's what my algorithm has him at, but that's not considering all the people touting players this week that have all talked about Adam Shank. I mean, every big golf channel that you can think of has talked up Adam Shank this week. So 0.4% is not going to happen. I can just tell you that. It's going to be closer to like 5-6%, whereas everyone else around here is going to be like 0.3, 0.4% owned. So you're not talking just like, 3.4% more. You're talking 10 times the ownership on somebody like an Adam Shank. So that would be my only thing with that, Chandler, is maybe pivoting off of him. But the rest of the lineup makes a lot of sense. Matthew says, could you quickly hit on your Patreon channel and what you have that out for? So wait, let me read that again. Could you quickly hit on your Patreon channel and what you give out there that might be different than here? So on the Patreon, I give out all my bets. I do a lot of live chats on there. I'm willing to help people one-on-one. I talk about my prize pick stuff on there, weather stuff. Pretty much the in-depth discussion that happens here is happening 24/7 there on that Patreon. So rather than it just being an hour that you guys have my time on there, pretty much like your golf betting consultant on there on the Discord. So I think a lot of people can attest to that. There's a ton of information that I give on there that I can't give here on the live stream, right? For example, if the weather changes here an hour later, that's where I give that type of update. If there's somebody that I add to my player pool that I, didn't have in as of right now, which happens every single week, talk about it on the Patreon. Any first round leader bets, any showdown stuff, all that sort of fun stuff. That's where that goes down. So if you're looking for everything I have to offer, that's what the Patreon is for. If you're looking for a taste of what I have to offer, that's what these videos are for. So that's what I'd say with that, Matthew. If you're looking to get serious about golf and DFS betting, I'd recommend getting the Patreon. Robert says, thanks for the content, boss. You're out. Thanks for stopping by. Appreciate you stopping by. And Wilson Dog says, great grandfather won and made the PGA 4 times. It's true. Good for him. That's awesome, man. All right, let's talk about the rest of the 6K range here. So scroll down here. We already talked a little bit about, I believe, where did we leave off? Left off with Pat Perez. So let's talk about Russell Knox. Russell Knox is an accuracy first type of player, great in windy conditions, accurate off of the tee. Now, the recent form hasn't really been there for Russell Knox, but if you've been following the channel for quite some time, you know that I really like what he has to offer, at least from a skill set perspective. So I will certainly have some of him. Denny McCarthy makes sense. He's an elite level putter. Also been playing some pretty decent golf of late. Doug Gim, we talked about in the value picks video. I really do like first off, his putting on bent grass, right? We talked about that a little bit earlier, but accurate off the tee, solid on approach. The recent form metrics have been pretty decent for Doug Gim as well. So how's all of that working for him? Rory Sabatini likes positional type of golf courses. So I will be getting a little bit of exposure there. JT Poston, I could see myself playing him. I just wasn't able to grab him in my own lineups. You can't play everyone that you want to. Brandon Wu, the shots gained look great for him. In fact, my modeling absolutely loves Brandon Wu this week. But he's gaining on approach. He's gaining off the tee. He's also gaining with the flat stick, right? That's the perfect recipe for success this week. Does it have Grayson Sig, maybe worth a few shots at $6,500. Tends to prefer the bent grass surface. Kurt Kitayama, also a bent grass specialist, coming in with some pretty incredible form, gaining a ton of strokes on approach, gaining off the tee. Also another guy that's gaining with the flat stick. You have Austin Smotherman, perhaps my favorite play on the entire slate, so I won't talk about him anymore. Love the putting on bent grass. Love that he's gaining off the tee and on approach, and has been gaining with the putter of late. So really checking every box we're looking for once again. Mark Hubbard and Scott Stallings tend to like these positional courses a lot more than the longer, more difficult courses that we have on tour. So always worth a few looks at these venues. You have Nick Taylor at $6,300, another plotter type of player that tends to prefer these shorter tracks where it's all about accuracy over power. Another bent grass specialist. It's another guy that I'm using for that reason. You can take a look at Andrew Putnam, Hickok, Michael Thompson. They're all guys that tend to do their best work at these short golf courses. Svensson, another young ball striker. You could go to him. I love Doc Redman, though. I'm going to have, I believe it's 15% Doc Redman this week. I love his skill set. He lost 50 measured rounds for Doc Redman. He's got probably by far the most, I should say, impressive skill set, right? He's just slight loser off the tee. He's a gainer on approach, slight loser at the putter. He's, like a PGA Tour average player, whereas a lot of the other guys down here, you see a lot of deep red, right? Close to half a stroke lost in categories. You're not going to get that with Doc Redman. Doc Redman's going to be a pretty even-killed character, right? If anything, he does struggle from time to time around the green, but that's the one category that I'm almost completely disregarding this week. So if anybody down low you're going to go to, it would be Doc Redman. Adam Schenk, we talked about a little bit. I think he's just going to be a little bit higher round than he should be with some of the sentiment around him in the industry. And then Robert Streb, he would be the pivot down low. So if you want to play somebody at $6,000, for me, it would be Robert Streb because he's a great putter on bent grass, very similar to somebody like an Adam Schenk. And the shots gained metrics are kind of similar. So if we look at the last 50 rounds, let's see. Robert Streb is gaining around the green. He's a slight loser off the tee and on approach, whereas where's Schenk, right? Slight loser off the tee, slight loser on approach. He's actually losing across all four categories, right? So you're going to tell me he's going to be 6% owned, and then somebody like Robert Streb, who at least actually gains in one category and is a slight less of a loser off the tee than somebody like Schenk, is going to be like 15 times less owned. I'm going to make that pivot all day, right? So it's just trying to make those type of decisions down low that I think are going to help you guys out in the long run. So let's go ahead and catch up on chat before we hop into some strategy talk before we finish this. We have Chandler who says the best golf Patreon to join. Yeah, I agree. I know you're talking to Matthew there, but yeah, I agree. It's $1 for the month, right? It's the best deal that you're going to be able to get. And a lot of information that goes on there that I'm not able to talk about on the videos. And you can get personalized help. If you need help with actually building your set of 150 lineups, I'm willing to actually sit down with you and help you do so, right? You can screen share your screen, help you talk through the process, whatever it is. That's how you get that type of help. Wilson says, who do you think is going to win? That's got to be Jordan Spieth for me. That's for sure. And Matthew says, last question for you, Luke. Are you a golfer? Are you any good? Or are you in the realm of more golf nerds? So I am a golf nerd. I don't want to completely separate myself from that entire genre, but yeah, I also play golf. I played in high school, played a little bit in college, I am a single digit handicap, close to low single digits in terms of my handicap. And I haven't been able to play as much over the last month because I've been pretty busy with the content creation side of things. I'm starting to get busy trying to ramp up the channel, right? Get more content out there for all of you guys, but pretty decent golfer. I'm not a good putter. The one thing I'll say is that I'm a very solid ball striker. I hit a lot of fairways, a lot of greens, cannot make a putt for the life. So if you're going to come around to the channel, if you're going to be in these live streams, you'll probably hear me bitch about it a lot. Yeah, I don't make many putts. I'm kind of like a Luke List out there. I can do everything but putt. But we'll stop talking about my game. This is we're just going to talk about the PGA Tour pros here primarily. Wilson Dog says, "Do you think I should go for CT Pan at this tournament?" I think he's worth a few looks. He's a fair price tag. I think he'll be like 10% owned in GPP, so he's not going to be a super sneaky play. But yeah, I think he's worth a few looks. Wilson. He's certainly a solid play. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. We're going to hop into DraftKings, and we're going to make a few lineups together because the whole point of this is to kind of give you my thought process when I'm putting together a lineup. We're going to do a GPP lineup to start, and then afterwards, we're going to make a cash lineup. So, of course, different thought process that goes into building these lineups. When we're talking about a GPP lineup, a lot more worried about ownership than we are projection. It's a lot about game theory when it goes to actually making a GPP lineup. Whereas with cash, we're just going based on projection, right? Whatever the best median projection is going to be, it's going to be the lineup that I actually end up entering. So let's go ahead and start off with the GPP lineup. And as per usual, this is the perfect time for any questions that you have. After we go through these two lineups, after I talk through my thought process, I am going to touch on any last second questions. So if you have any, make sure you throw them down below because after we do so, we are going to be ending the stream. So just a fair warning as of right now. Alrighty, let's talk through this GPP lineup now. So with a GPP lineup, there's multiple ways to differentiate yourself. So I know I mentioned that ownership was the important factor, but if you want to take the chalky plays, you can still do so, right? Kind of like I was mentioning with a Chandler before, if you want to take a Jordan Spieth, a Max Homa together, take another piece of chalk, maybe like a Davis Riley in that 8K range, just make sure you're taking a guy that's like 0.4, maybe like 2% owned in that 6K range, right? Make sure you're not taking somebody like an Adam Schenk that might be an extremely popular play this week. So that's going to be the strategy here. So for this lineup, we're going to start with Collin Morikawa, just to maybe differentiate ourselves a little bit more. We're going to go away from a Jordan Spieth lineup here. In terms of a second man in, I think starting in the 9K range makes some sense. You go to an answer, you can go to a Sungjae Im. Let's just go ahead and put Sungjae Im for the sake of this lineup. That puts us at 7,500 remaining, right about that, for our last 4 spots. So probably maybe take one guy in the 8K range, right, and then try and round out our lineup. Let's go ahead and put Webb Simpson in there. Love him this week. We have 71 remaining for our last 3. So they take somebody in this mid 7K range. I say mid to upper 7K range. Let's go with somebody like a Tom Hoge. Let's put a Patrick Reed in there. And for a last man in, that puts us down at $6,400. And let's think through this, right? Because, we have our 5 slots on already. Let's make sure that we've differentiated ourselves enough. So first off, we don't have Jordan Spieth up top. That is a check in our department, something that we're looking for. Sungjae Im going to be relatively low owned. Webb Simpson relatively low owned. So I feel pretty confident about our top 3 there. Now, Tom Hoge, he's going to garner some ownership there, but he's not going to be super mega chalky. So I don't even think we have to leave salary on the table. We have at least 2 to 3 pivots in our lineup. And as a result, we can spend all of our salary. So if you want to take a Kurt Kitayama, who might be 5% owned on the slate, we can still go ahead and do so. But let's go ahead and imagine a scenario now where we're maybe a little bit more chalky, right? Let's go ahead and let's just show you what a chalk lineup would look like, right? So we take a Jordan Spieth, we take a Max Homa in this lineup, and in the 8K range, take a Jason Kokrak, right? He's going to be relatively chalky. That would put us at $7,000. And now I'm not going to be playing Max Homa this week, right? So I'm not going to be landing on this type of lineup. But if I was and I had 3 pieces of quote unquote chalk, you can argue 4 here with a Tom Hoge, I would certainly be leaving salary on the table. I'd go down to maybe $6,700, slot in somebody like a Doug Gim here. And with the salary on the table, I'm a little bit more confident in this not being duplicated. But even more so, right, just trying to get leverage on the field, give ourselves an opportunity to actually move up against some of our peers. So that would be the type of thought process I'm going through when making a GPP lineup. I would much prefer to just not take all the chalk together, though, right? I mean, leaving salary on the table isn't my favorite thing to do to begin with. And I'm not as sold on guys like a Max Homa to begin with. So let's hop over to cash, though. And in cash, completely different mindset, right? If anything, high ownership is what we're looking for. So in a cash type of build, I want to take somebody like a Jordan Spieth. In fact, I also want to take somebody like a Max Homa. Also in cash, we want to be as balanced as we can in this 8 and 7K range. So probably not taking somebody like a Taylor Gooch in this or a Webb Simpson. That would probably be a little bit too aggressive for my liking. Going to somebody like let's say a Chris Kirk or an HV3, perfect type of play in this scenario. So let's go ahead and just put HV3 in there because he is a little bit cheaper. We still have $7,400 remaining per player. So we could probably, I mean, let's just do this. Let's just take all of them there in that upper 7K range. Let's take an HV3, a Chris Kirk, and a Brian Harmon there. That puts us at $6,700, which is maybe slightly lower than I'd like, but I mean, there's guys like Doug Gim there that I love, right? So this would be the type of lineup that I'm looking at in a cash, right? Just high-owned Jordan Spieth, high-owned Max Homa, locking those two in, living in the top of that 7K range where you have some chalky plays that are also just really solid plays on the slate, like an HV3, Chris Kirk and Harmon. Now, if you wanted to be slightly more, let's say, balanced about it, maybe don't take a Chris Kirk there, right? Go to the middle of the 7K range. Take somebody like a Tom Hoagie. So where's Tom Hoagie? 7,600. And then just go down to $7,000, right? So rather than $6,700, end up at $7,000 and take somebody like let's say David Lipsky. He'd be a great last man in. So that's the type of lineup or thought process that I'd be going through in a cash contest, in a 50-50 or a double up type of scenario. We'll catch up on chat before we hop out of here. We have Matthew says, great stuff. We have Chandler says, Mr. Talk on Scooter. Are you fading because of ownership, or do you think Spieth is just going to run away with it? Yeah, I'm definitely playing Spieth. I have an outright bet on him, $400 outright bet. He's going to be in 40% of my lineups. There's just no reason to fade him. Like, if you look at the metrics, everything looks great for Jordan Spieth. So I will certainly be riding the Jordan Spieth bandwagon, that's for sure. And lastly, last question we have from Chris, who says, I think I'm just going to stick to the Fleetwood and cash head-to-head. So Spieth, Fleetwood, Nah, Kirk, McNeely, and Rye. Kind of tough to get up to Finau over Fleetwood without losing guys I like. Yeah, good point. So, obviously there's the opportunity cost involved with going with that type of pivot. And it's not like I hate Fleetwood this week. It's a pretty silly reason why I'm fading him to begin with, right? So I don't think you need to make that change. That looks pretty damn solid to me. I think the only question mark, I guess, would be McNeely. But if you take a look at the long-term sample size, I mean, me and you are in agreement there, Chris. I mean, he's a much better player than what we've seen. So maybe other people would say that it's more risky, but I don't think it is. And I think you tend to agree there too. So let's go ahead and leave that there. Chandler says, let's go Spieth. No better way to end the stream there. Hopefully it's a Jordan Spieth week. If it is, it's going to be two monster outrights back to back. So I'd certainly be okay with that. And I would be my second favorite player in the world winning one week and my favorite player in the world winning the next week, which is an even bigger thing to me. I mean, the monetary thing's all great, right? But I'm a golf fan first, right? I want to see my guys win. So hopefully it's a Jordan Spieth week, guys. Hopefully you guys have a solid week with your DFS lineups. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. As per usual, we'll have some showdown streams this weekend, also some prize picks videos. So make sure to keep an eye out for all of that content. If you haven't already smashed the like button, please go ahead and do so. It helps get the content out to more people. Lets me know that you guys are enjoying these live streams. You enjoy the opportunity to ask these questions, all that sort of stuff. So make sure you go ahead and do that. And if you haven't already subscribed, I mean, first off, what are you doing? Make sure you go ahead and do that as well, so you don't miss any of that content when it drops. I appreciate you guys. Best of luck with your lineups, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.